Right, hello everyone, welcome back to my Preacher review series. Today we're looking at book 2, there you go. And before we get into it, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone that checked out my first video. Thank you so much for all the support I received on that. It really meant a lot to me, and I'm glad that people enjoyed that video because this is a book and this is a series that I really love and really enjoy, hence why I'm doing this review. So it's just great to see that people are liking it, so yeah, thank you. Okay, let's get into this then. So,
was the son of a preacher man, the only boy who could ever teach me.
Spoiler-free talk first off. As I mentioned, this is a book that I really love and really enjoy, and something I was aware of whilst I was editing my last video. I talked about the show a lot, and I know some people might enjoy that, some people might not enjoy that, so I'm going to try and refrain from talking about the show as much in this video. So, book 2. It follows on from everything that happened at the end of book 1. Obviously, the big event at the end of book 1 with the Longels, we all know what happened there. And so the Saint of Killers is investigating that. We're introduced to 2 new characters in this book, Jesus Dessard and Hairstar. Hairstar being the main sort of character that we're introduced to. Yeah, so he meets Featherstone and Hoover, who are 2 agents of the Grail, at the airport, and instantly, well, I'll talk about that later in spoilers. We're introduced to him. And then we get this issue all about Jesse's father, which was an issue that I really loved and I really enjoyed. It's just him sat at a bar and someone comes and talks to him and mistakes him for his father at first, and then tells Jesse that they served together in the Vietnam War. And the issue is called Texas and Spaceman. And it's sort of a really nice issue because it gives you this backstory to Jesse's father, and you get a sense of what he was like. Completely is missed out in the show. You never really see anything about Jesse's father, so it's nice to see like he was a soldier who then became a preacher after he came back, and so it's very interesting. It sort of builds his character, but it also builds Jesse's character more because you have flashbacks to him and you see like everything that he's fighting for, and why he is the way he is because of his father. Similarly to that, we get a backstory on Genesis in this issue, in this book as well. We see how Genesis was created, and it's a spawn of a relationship between a devil and an angel. And so yeah, Genesis is created that way, and we get a backstory for that. Something else that happens is Humperdoo and the Allfather are introduced in this book. Obviously they're a big part of the show, especially Humperdoo, who is not really given much in this book. I'll talk about that more in spoilers, but yeah, in the show that was very interesting because I was expecting it to be the big focal point of the book, much like it is in the show. He's like the Messiah who's going to bring about the end of the world in the show and all that. But no, he's introduced in this, and I'll talk about it more in spoilers, but he's not in the rest of the book. And then finally, for non-spoilers talk, we get another backstory. Yeah, again, we get a backstory for Cassidy. We see how he became the way that he is. We see his backstory in the 1800s, fighting for Ireland. We see how he became a vampire, and so it ends with him and Jesse stood on top of the Empire State Building, and he's sort of telling Jesse how he was an immigrant that came to America, how he's been surviving the way he has, like how he's basically done everything and why he loves America, because it's sort of this idea of the American dream for him. He's come over from Ireland where he lost his brother and he had nothing, and now he's like sort of reinvented himself almost as this American loving vampire. But it's very interesting to see. You see him grow up from being this you see him grow up. You see him sort of grow from being like this child character to this guy who's seen everything, who's like seen war, who's seen his friends die, who's seen his friends grow old. He's experimented with like drugs and all this. He's done all kinds of stuff, and it gives you a really in-depth look into his backstory, and it's quite nice in a way because it ends with him basically saying that he loves New York, and it just makes you grow closer to him and to Jesse as characters. And so it's nice because you get their bond, and obviously earlier in the book he has the thing where he pretends to be Jesse and saves Jesse's life that way, and now you're getting more insight as to why he might have done that. You're getting insight as to their relationship between the 2 of them. It's a nice friendship that they're building. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think that's all I can really talk about for non-spoilers. So if this is all the video you needed, thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing and leaving a like if you enjoyed. and I will see you all later. See you later. Bye. Okay, so now on to spoiler talk.
Was the son of a preacher man, the only boy who could ever teach me.
Okay, right, so if you're watching this, that means you've either read it or you don't care about spoilers. So let's talk about spoilers. So, first thing, as I mentioned, Hairstar is introduced to Featherstone and Hoover. First thing he does is shoot Poisson, I think the guy's called. Poussan, I think is how you spell his name. Let's try and find it here. But yeah, he shoots him and sort of is like leading a coup from inside the Grail, sort of to take over the Old Father, and he's been corresponding with Featherstone and Hoover, who are going to help him with that. So it's interesting to sort of see him build up his repertoire from this character that, you know, doesn't have much power inside the Grail. He's not as high as he wants to be. He wants to be like the leader of everything. And so it's interesting to see him try and achieve that. As I mentioned in non-spoiler talk, Tulip shoots his ear off, much like she does in the show, and it's really satisfying if you've watched the show and like if you've read the rest of the book, rest of the series. So it happens at the Desard Palace mansion, and yeah, the Grail come in trying to get Jesse because Hairstar is after him, and he escapes. Cassidy's captured, like I mentioned, and Tulip, being an absolute badass that she is, kills all these guys, shoots Hairstar's ear off, and survives. And it's just violent and exceptionally well drawn by Steve Dillon. It's just great. I really loved it. You sort of see a bit of a backstory into Tulip, but it's an unwritten backstory you have from Tulip here. You see her shoot the 3 guys and she says thanks Dad, so it implies that her father like taught her, you know, everything she knows about shooting and hunting or anything like that. And they're discussing whether or not he should go to Masada alone to rescue Cassidy. Ultimately he ends up leaving Tulip in the motel and goes to Masada on his own to rescue Cassidy. So all the while Hairstar's realised Cassidy is not Jesse Custer and tries to kill him, and when Cassidy ultimately survives because he's a vampire, Hairstar hires this guy to literally just try and kill Cassidy, and it just ends up being him laid on the floor getting shot over and over by this guy. And as I mentioned earlier, you have the issue of Jesse's father. While this is going on, sort of takes you back out of the action and lets you sort of sit in it for a bit. You know, you sit wondering what's happening to Cassidy and Jesse. Is he going to save him in time before somehow he dies or Hairstar kills him? So then we get to sort of the end half of this book, and I mean, you have the big moment. Jesse goes to Masada. Jesse attempts to rescue Cassidy. All the while, the All-Father is being introduced and Hairstar's trying to, you know, take his place. And then you get an issue, this like brilliant issue of the Saint of Killers just on a boat. It's not even an issue, it's just the opening to Stormbringers, which is when the All-Father lands, and it's literally just a page of the Saint of Killers on a boat. You see all these men dead, and he's just so determined to come and kill Jesse Custer. So yeah, as I mentioned, the All-Father comes in and he's just this massive, massive guy. Humperdoo is also with him. And something I thought when I was reading this was I thought Humperdoo and the All-Father would be such an integral part of the story, just like they are in the show. And ultimately in the show, Jesse ends up, you know, blowing up the All-Father. The All-Father in this is such a sickening character. Like, Steve Dillon draws it so perfectly. Jesse comes in and ends up fighting Hairstar because obviously Hairstar kidnapped Cassidy, tries to kill Tulip. So Jesse is understandably annoyed and chases him downstairs where, you know, you find this angel that is chained up, and then the Saint of Killers is stood there, and the first thing he says to him is, just how fast you reckon you can preach? So you have this really tense exchange between Jesse and the Saint of Killers, and it's sort of, you're unsure why the Saint of Killers is here. Is he here to kill Cassidy? Is he here to kill Jesse? You'd think Jesse, and so they go into the room where the angel's chained up, and turns out that the Saint of Killers wants to question the angel as to where his wife and daughter are and like whether or not he can get back to them. And this is sort of like, obviously you see it in the show a lot, but I think this was done so much better in the book. The angel being tied up by the Grail, obviously this organisation that aims to sort of run the Christ bloodline on and on, but they have a literal angel chained up. And so all this time, the Allfather is sending people to kill Hairstar because he's leading a coup against him, and basically, yeah. So the Saint of Killers ends up working together with Jesse and Hairstar, well, for a moment. And there's this shot of him literally shooting an entire hallway of people because they're all just trying to kill the Saint of Killers and none of them are able to. All the while, the guy that's helping Hairstar to lead this coup takes Humperdoo hostage. Hairstar and Jesse are trying to leave and end up having a fight because Hairstar tries to betray him, and Jesse has this, I don't know, because I was looking at it, Jesse's this character that you're supposed to sympathise with, but he's also this guy who's had this terrible past and is this violent character that goes to extremes, and so he grabs this knife and carves a line into Hairstar's head there, which is to see your character do that is, oh Jesus, that was extreme. And then when you see him in the elevator leaving and Jesse's shouting at him with Genesis come back and he's just covering his ears with his head bleeding, oh god. So yeah, then things carry on, and the helicopter ends up trying to leave because they're going to basically bomb it to kill the Saint of Killers. And so Hairstar is on the helicopter with the Allfather and pushes the Allfather out of the helicopter, and you just have this panel of the guy that was helping Hairstar and Humperdoo just stood up looking at the Allfather as he, comes down and crushes the bed ultimately. And so Jesse then goes to rescue Cassidy, who's being tortured by this guy who's being shot, and the guy pulls a gun on him, has him aim, and he's like, one word and you're dead. So Jesse, obviously being a quick thinker, uses Genesis and just says miss, and then goes and beats the guy, who falls back into this sort of theatre and breaks his neck, and then Cassidy, sucks his blood and sort of regrows all the wounds that he had. And then we come back to the Allfather that is dead and has crushed Humperdoo, the Messiah, and Masada blows up. You see Jesse and Cass are trying to escape. Cassidy is in the worst shape we've seen him, missing a foot and an arm and blown up and shot. And then the first sort of panel of the next issue is Jesse and Cassidy limping away from Masada as it, rests in ruins. And then we get, as they're leaving, we get the issue of Cassidy's backstory. I think it's 2 issues. You see everything that he did in the war, and he feels guilty for, everyone dying, and his brother who died, and he gets bitten by a lake vampire that's, I don't know, it's very strange, because it's not really sort of explained in the show, but in this, they were just walking and a vampire came out of the lake and bit him. And then you have this sort of issue where he's talking about he's trying to crawl out of the river and he just sets fire, so he has to live in this river for a few days, and then someone comes past and he has to go out at night, and then eventually he leaves and comes to America, and you have this last final issue is just set on top, well, the last 2 issues are set on top of the Empire State Building as he's talking to Jesse about everything he went through and his dream of becoming successful in America. And you kind of see that, but you also see that as he's come to America with these hopes and dreams, and it hasn't really played out for him. He's not successful despite being immortal, having as much time as he wants to do anything. He's kind of squandered it by being a drug addict and everything. And then it ends with him saying, I love New York. So it's kind of this touching moment in one sense, because he's talking to Jesse about everything he's gone through and they're building their relationship, and you get an insight as to their relationship. But it's also America for him is everything that he couldn't do in Ireland. He couldn't have the drugs and the women and the booze and everything like that he has now. It's sort of this ultra violent American stigma type, if that makes any sense to anyone. I'm aware that I'm rambling on a lot, so I will leave this video here. Thank you for watching. If anything I talked about was interesting to you, or if you enjoyed this video for any reason, please leave a like down below and consider subscribing so you don't miss out on the next Preacher review that I do. Book 3 will probably be coming out probably next week. In the meantime, I've got unboxings on my channel, so if you want to check any of those out, please feel free, and I will see you all later. See you later. Bye.